Welcome, birders. This is Ed Pullen, your host on the Bird Banter Podcast, where birders talk birding. This has been a terrific week. You have to love it when daylight savings time comes and you don't have to get up so early to go birding, and you get to stay out birding later in the evening. That's always good. Plus, new birds are showing up. The weather's turned out well the last couple of days, and yesterday I got out to Joint Base Lewis McChord, saw my first violet-green swallows of the season, then western bluebirds. Even got a picture of the violet-green swallow showing the violet tail and the green back, which is just really fun. But you know, the best thing of the week is that I've got Ben Lizdas on as my guest today on the Bird Banter Podcast. Ben is a world-renowned expert in birding optics. Worked at Eagle Optics for quite a while, but now has a startup business with Birdwatchers Digest called Red Start Birding, where they have a curated selection of optics so you can find only stuff that's good. You don't have to sift through all of the garbage, and should be really a nice resource for birders. So I'm excited today for the Bird Banter Podcast, episode number 7. So welcome, Ben, to the Bird Banter Podcast. Thanks for being on the show.
No, it's my pleasure, Ed. Thanks for the invite. Appreciate it.
Yeah, good. Anyway, Ben, I got a chance to look at your bio and at the Red Start Birding page, and boy, you've got quite a history, quite a story as an optics guy, the LeBron James of optics. That's well, you got to have some game to live up to that.
I guess so. Yeah, I kind of came into birding the long way around. I went to college studying landscape architecture with an emphasis on restoration ecology.
Oh, okay.
And I've always had an interest in, ecology, natural history, the outdoors. It's always been something I've been keen on, and plants seem like a really easy avenue to get there. They stay in one place.
They don't move around. That's nice.
They don't move around. When you want to study and research them, there aren't any ethical issues about taking living creatures, like animal type living creatures, out of their habitat. Or it just seemed like a cleaner type of a family of organisms to work with.
Yeah.
And so I really got into that, and doing research one summer, collecting plant samples of prairies here in Wisconsin. I would often go out with a bird surveyor to these grassland and prairie parcels here in Wisconsin, and early in the morning I would help her on her bird surveys, just sort of, a person to help identify birds with my basic birding knowledge, which is very rudimentary early on.
Sure.
And
this is in college now, Ben? We're talking...
This is in college,
yes.
This
Okay.
was way back. This was, pre-2000.
Got it. Okay.
So that's kind of initially how I became susceptible to getting into bird watching.
Uh-huh.
But really, I ended up getting a job at Eagle Optics right around 2000, just as a seasonal job. I was working as with a landscape architecture, doing design, build stuff, restoration ecology. It was seasonal work, though. So come winter, I needed to get a winter job. I knew some friends who were working at Eagle Optics, got a job there. And then when I had access to not just really good optics, but when I had access to a community of bird watchers and really high-level birders,
sure,
it seemed to open up a lot of doors to me in terms of developing an interest in bird watching. So, and then it just was like wildfire after that. I was all about birds, and it certainly helped me evolve as a optics salesperson.
Sure.
If I'm going to have a job selling optics to bird watchers,
again, it helps to talk the game. Yeah,
exactly. And you might as well go all in and kind of be able to put yourself in their shoes, be able to have empathy for the problems they're trying to solve, and also share a common passion. And really glad it was birds as opposed to, say, selling someone tires for their automobile or insurance policies.
For sure.
I don't know if I get as passionate about that, but it seemed pretty easy to get passionate about birds.
Yeah, it is. I fell into it later in my life, around 30 or so, and boy, I've been pretty enamored ever since. So
yeah,
but I started. I don't know, maybe 15 years ago or something, I'd been battling, crappy optics my whole birding life, and some guy says, well, what are you doing with those binos? I said, what do you mean? He says, you just need to buy the best binos you can afford. And I said, like, duh.
Yeah.
And went out and bought some Swarovskis and have been in love ever since. That's great. Yeah.
It's amazing, as someone who I can remember when I was just starting to get into optics and the reality of how much expensive good binoculars are. And this was, right around 2000. So
Sure.
the real high-end binoculars then, still the same brands that we're familiar with today, Leica, Zeiss, and Swarovski. They were, Bausch & Lomb actually had a nice high-end pair of binoculars then, but they were coming in around $800-900.
Yeah.
But, coming into that space from someone who didn't have a birding background and certainly not an optics background, I was thinking to myself, good binoculars might cost $150-200 maybe.
Yeah.
But everything kind of shifts once you kind of realize the scope of the marketplace, and obviously once you realize how good binoculars you can be. And the downside of jumping into that space, though, of course, is that all the optics that I had been used to using no longer really.
You couldn't look through them anymore. It just hurt your eyes.
Exactly.
It hurt your eyes.
Exactly. It'd be like going back to watching black and white television,
Or fuzzy black and white television. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, so you got the job with the Eagle Optics, and your career has been legendary almost ever since. You're the optics guy.
Well, it seemed to stick with me. I guess I naturally relate to people pretty well, which makes me a good salesperson, and therefore I also found myself in a position of kind of managing the sales staff at Eagle Optics too. So I was a sales and marketing manager for a long time. So as a result, one of the things that I love so much about my job is I get to go out to birdwatching festivals and events around the country. I've been doing that for, I guess, going on 16 years now, and it's a great way of not only seeing the birds all around North America, but of meeting and interacting with bird watchers and appreciating kind of what that demographic looks like, the different people, the different places, and developing those relationships is all something that I absolutely love. It really makes me feel good about the work that I do, being able to see firsthand how selling someone something can really help them and bring them joy. So being in the position that I had, being able to interact with all these birders throughout all those years, it was really easy to become an expert on optics because I was just incentivized by helping people, essentially.
Yeah. Well, you're certainly easy to talk to. I met you at the San Diego festival just a week or two ago, and you seemed like a normal guy. I was impressed. That's cool. And I listened in preparation for this. I listened to a few of your recent podcasts. You did one on backyard birding, I think. And I've got a friend who has a couple of grandkids, and she wanted me to take them birding. And I said, "Oh God, I don't have any binos they can use." And you mentioned those, I think, Kawa 630 binos. And I thought those sound perfect, so I just ordered a pair, and I'm going to get them next week. So I'm excited. You've got a Red Start birding customer. I just signed up.
Awesome. Thanks, Ed. Appreciate that.
So I can't wait. It's going to be fun. I remember I tried to get my kids into birding with the same binos I started with, Bushnell 735s, and God, they work. Oh, I got those out the other day, and I said, no wonder my kids didn't like to go birding.
Yeah. People often will show me their ancient binoculars and saying, well, what can I do with these? And antique binoculars are kind of like antique computers. It's like it's an instrument that you get for its functionality, and unless it's got sentimental value, you look at those old binoculars and you say, I just don't know what you would do with these.
You can't even recycle them.
You can't really recycle them, and it's hard to say pass them on to someone else to show someone the joy of birding because it's exactly. Cool. Anyway, so you're now with Birdwatchers Digest and Red Star Birding. Tell us about that company and how are you going to compete with the Amazons of the world, and what's your strategy? So I've been working with Birdwatchers Digest for 14 years or so when I was at Eagle Optics, as advertising partners of ours.
I didn't know that.
And I would run into Bill Thompson, the editor and publisher, on a regular basis at birding events, as he would be doing keynotes and promoting some of the books he'd written. So I had a long-standing friendship with Bill. He and I just, peas in a pod, we got on great from the moment we met. And so
sounds like everybody gets along with Bill Thompson pretty well. He just
for the most part.
Seems like a super nice guy.
Super gregarious person, really funny, and always putting other people before him. He's always taking care of people. So it's really difficult to not like Bill instantly upon meeting him. So he and I just always had a great friendship and got on great. And so when it came time for me to move on from Eagle Optics. Bill said, well, why don't you come work for me at Birdwatchers Digest? We need someone to do our ad sales for us. So, it was a sales job. It wasn't what I was used to necessarily, but, I had a chance to go on a number of birding trips with Bill throughout this job opportunity and whatnot. So essentially I jumped on board there. And then one of the projects I initiated was developing Red Start Birding. I told Bill, we should diversify the business here and really continue making this pivot from a magazine that now does some events and has some tours and whatnot to offering a stronger retail component that we can help serve birders. And I've got connections in optics. I've got history here. I know how to take care of this. So then we developed Red Start Birding, and it really cut in the same mold that Eagle Optics was. Yes. And that is just a really high level of customer service, curated selection of optics. We really only stock things that I could look someone in the face and say, I think you'd be happy with this for the money.
Yeah, and I think what you can emphasize that. Say it again. I mean, that's for a beginner. I mean, you go on Amazon or something. It's like, my God, where do we even start?
Exactly. So that's one of the high level of customer service and expertise is something that I count on separating us from Amazon. Certainly, Amazon is great for buying stuff, but for learning about things or for making a selection, for paring down choices, for understanding what you get at certain price points in optics, you're not going to go to Amazon to get a birder's perspective on why A, B, or C works well for birding, or why you might want to consider D, E, or F instead of that.
Sure.
So with my 18 years of history in birding optics, and then you look at Birdwatchers Digest, which has been around for 40 years, I think what we offer is just a degree of experience and expertise that's hard to find in birding, particularly something that might be so finely tuned and specialized on just the optics end of things.
Sure.
For bird watching. So that's what I like to think of as being the value that we bring to it. And in this day and age, with a lot of these optics manufacturers and the pricing structures they have in place, I'd say 95% of everything we stock at Red Start Birding, you cannot get cheaper.
Everything costs the same everywhere.
Everything costs the same everywhere.
Pennies difference maybe, but not even that usually.
Yeah, so I would say that I think we do well, like I said, coming to this from a point of view of experts. And one of the nice things about Birdwatchers Digest in terms of being able to have a business like Red Start and get it off the ground in this day and age when e-commerce competition is still pretty fierce. We have some podcasts that we produce out there with the birds and this birding life. We've got Birdwatchers Digest, the magazine. We've got a digital newsletter, Birdwire. So we have lots of content that we can use to kind of make our presence known in the market for birders. Granted, it's still been a slow start. Coming from Eagle Optics, as big and well established of a company that was, being in year 2 of Red Start Birding, I'm constantly reminded things take time. I kind of wanted to go out of the gates and be half the size of Eagle Optics right out of the gates, and business doesn't work that way. And learning that, but still really pleased with what we've been able to get done with Red Start thus far.
Well, good for you. Good for you. So you have, I think Red Start has or maybe Birdwatchers Digest did before, I'm not sure, have some tours and that sort of thing too, don't you?
Yeah, Birdwatchers Digest, we run a series of tours called Reader Rendezvous. And, I'll start off by saying we're not a tour company. And to our advantage, to some extent, we pick about 7 tours a year that we do, period. Not like 7 trips to one destination or 7 destinations that we go to multiply. We do 7 completely different tours a year. And each year they're different. We handpick them. We have meetings. We talk about places that, are maybe a little bit off the beaten path, but have great birding. We talk about places that have logistically work out well, that can accommodate birders. And these tours will be a combination of international destinations and domestic trips. So for instance, this year in 2019, I'm about to head to Spain for a Reader Rendezvous that we're doing there. That's going to be next week. I'm heading there.
Very nice.
I'm sorry, it's the end of this week.
A little warmer than Mount Horeb.
A little warmer than Mount Horeb, yeah, exactly. So that's going to be one of our international ones. We've got a tour coming up to Panama this year. It's going to be another one of our international tours. It's going to be in the fall, and in the fall we have a South African tour. So we've got 3 international tours this year. The Panama one will be at the Canopy Tower for a little bit, and then at a lodge called Tranquilo Bay, run by James and Renee Kimball. I've never been to Tranquilo Bay before, but I've just heard wonderful things about it. And of course, Canopy Tower. If any of your listeners have not been to the Canopy Tower yet, if they ever get a chance or desire to go birding in Panama, definitely put that on your list.
I think everyone's heard of it. I certainly haven't been there.
It's a phenomenal place.
Yeah.
And then other tours this year is going to be the Prairies and Potholes area of North Dakota and the Texas Hill Country. Where we're going to go see the Mexican free-tailed bats, the golden cheek warbler, and the black-capped vireo.
Sure.
Some of our target birds there.
Nice birds.
And then another one this fall that we're doing with Maine Audubon, going out to Monhegan Island. So a pretty good lineup, and like I said, all kind of,
Do you get to go on all of these?
I get to go on most of them, almost all of them. Occasionally, we had one to Ecuador that we did earlier this year. We only sent one representative from the magazine, and that was our managing editor, Dawn. So, it's a lot to put on one person's plate to run the retail thing, to do the ad sales, I write some copy for the magazine, do the podcasts, and then go on a handful of trips each year. But it really is a fantastic way of making a living too. Yeah,
it sounds like it. Sounds like a dream job. Sounds like a dream job. I wish I could do my career over. Anyway, family doctor wasn't such a bad gig, though. I like that. Anyway,
very important.
So, Birdwatchers Digest has kind of a cool story. I looked at this. Sounds like a real family business. Can you give me a Cliff Notes version of that?
Yeah,
I think people would like to hear that.
Yeah, so Bill. So the current editor of Birdwatchers Digest is Bill Thompson III. His father, Bill Thompson II, and his wife Elsa are the ones who developed Birdwatchers Digest. And essentially, I think it was, as I understand, it was an idea. I think Bill's father had a background in journalism, I believe, and it was just kind of coming together of the family where they all decided, let's just launch this birding magazine and see where it takes us. And this was back in the day. I mean, 40 years ago. So there wasn't a lot of. It wasn't like they just
put it a self-published digital thing. A lot of ink and paper.
Yeah. It's just a different day and age, and there wasn't a lot of birdwatching content out there. Birdwatching was, way more small of a market than it is now. And you didn't have all these digital assets. So it was a very different time, and they just had the right idea at the right time.
Yeah,
and they really filled a spot.
They rode the wave, yeah.
They rode the wave, and they differentiated themselves from other birding publications in that they built themselves as a magazine for birders that love to read and for readers that love to bird.
That's a good tagline.
It really is, and the content is not all higher level bird identification or taxonomy,
it's a different niche for sure. Everything from the backyard birder to the avid birder.
A lot of it is storytelling. Even the columns that we do have that are more technical, whether it's some Jim McCormick's photography column or some of the identification columns that we do that like Alvaro Jaramillo does, it's written in a way that is, no pun intended, very digestible. So we try to think of it as a magazine that is accessible to all levels of birders, yet engaging, even for long, experienced birders who've, got life lists in the 700s.
Sure. So you've gotten to go some pretty cool places just going to all these bird festivals. Hits the ABA area pretty well. Do you have any favorite spots, places you really, really like to go or just enjoy, look forward to every year?
Yeah, I mean, so you and I just met not too long ago at the San Diego Birding Festival. Yeah. And as someone who lives in Wisconsin, by the time the end of February, beginning of March comes rolling around, it's nice to just escape kind of the winter a little bit at that point. And granted, I love winter, a big winter sports fan. But the San Diego Birding Festival comes at the right time of year. It's just beautiful there. The bird diversity is fantastic.
It is.
the place itself is great to visit. The great infrastructure, the restaurants, the food culture there. So all those things. I mean, when I look at what makes a great birding destination for me, I tend to look at it maybe more holistically than your average bird watcher. It's not just about the birding list, but that's important. But I do think about, the food, the lodging, the scenery, the whole part of the experience to me matters. So San Diego's a great spot. I also really like Southeast Arizona. Once again, another one of those border regions where you get, southern specialties.
Not quite as nice in August as San Diego in March, but yes, good.
Yeah, but still, I mean,
pretty nice.
Southeast Arizona in August is still pretty pleasant. The monsoons are coming in those mountainous areas. The temperatures are actually quite nice.
I've done it. It's wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great, and it's beautiful. It's remote, but it's gorgeous. So that's another one of those spots. And of course, you've got places like Cape May, New Jersey, where the birding is just always consistently good, and the birding culture there is so evolved. There's so many great birders.
Every time you turn around, you see a legend, it seems like.
Exactly. We did a reader rendezvous there last fall, and it was outstanding. We any given day, all the well-known birders you would run into, and just have these anecdotal conversations that would lead to these great birding insights. And then the spectacle of fall migration in Cape May it was outstanding. Whether we were at the Raptor Watch or one morning we were out birding at Higbee, and the number of northern flickers that were flying overhead, streams and streams of them.
It can be shocking.
It was. You just stopped looking at them for a little while because you just figured, well, they're going to wear out, and there's not going to be any more. You'd bird for like half an hour. You'd look up in the sky, and they'd be like, "There's that stream of flickers still going."
Yeah,
just phenomenal. So
it is.
Those are a couple of places. I had a chance to bird in Israel for the Champions of the Flyway. Kind of it's a bird.
I've heard of it.
And that was another place where being able to experience migration over on that side of the planet, all the birds migrating north from Africa into continental Europe, that was another fantastic experience. And Israel is kind of like a bit of a bottleneck as the birds kind of funnel up into Europe. They congregate right there in the southern tip of Israel. So it's a great place to be able to witness and appreciate the same phenomena of migration that we have here, but the pieces of the puzzle, all the players are totally different, of course, within bird species. So it's a really was a fascinating experience doing that.
Yeah, I'm going to Morocco in April with a group, and I'll kind of get awesome. the other end of that funnel. It should be pretty spectacular. I'm really excited.
Definitely.
Really excited. So those are some of your favorite spots. Do you have any particular experiences or people you've met that you thought are just worth talking about?
Boy, it's really hard to
single one out.
Single some of those places out. I mean, I think of, like, for instance, when I think of Champions of the Flyway, I think of time I've spent there with friends like Bill or Alvaro.
Alvaro seems like a really cool guy. I've heard him a couple of times in your podcasts, and he seems fascinating.
Incredibly smart. He's a genius, but he's so approachable and likable. And you being able to spend time with him, it's always laughs and insight. It's like we're either having a deep conversation or we are on the ground laughing.
Fun.
So my experiences traveling abroad birding, it's almost who I'm with. I was spending time at a different Champions of the Flyway event where not when Alvaro was on our team, but with Michael O'Brien, one of the Cape May birders, and George Armistead. And so I guess
he of the fabulous ears.
Yeah. When I think of when I think of the experiences I have birding and the people I get to meet, it isn't so much the people at those destinations, almost who I'm going there with. And it's really been one of the gifts of working in this industry at a level where I get around like this, where I get to meet people like, George, like Michael O'Brien, Louise Zimitis, fantastic Scott Weidensall. The list goes on and on of these really top-level birders that I get to casually hang out and go bird watching with. And it's inspiring and a little intimidating. The other day I was telling someone that I'm not an avid birder. And they looked at me and said, "What? You're not an avid birder?" And I just had to recalibrate my thoughts. And I think, well, it's all within
What's
context.
the scale?
It depends who you know. If you compare yourself to someone like a Kevin Carlson or a Michael O'Brien, you say, "Yeah, I'm not an avid birder."
Yeah.
But
I just bird every single day of my life. But other than that,
exactly. What you think of as an avid birder, just when you get to hang out with all these amazing and talented people, it skews everything, of course.
Yeah, it's the same with me. I mean, I'm locally, I'm okay. I get around and I can tell most of the birds, but I go out with some of my buddies and they are just really good, And we're talking on a Pierce County, Washington scale, not a worldwide scale, but it's the same idea. Your friends think, "Oh, you're really good," and I said, "You don't know what really good is."
Yeah, it's all relative, right?
For sure. For sure. Well, that is so cool that you get to kind of be buddies with the superstars. That's well, I
fill my little ditch. I can help out when they have optics questions.
Yes, exactly. Do you binos? Are they out of adjustment? Maybe I can help.
Yeah.
Exactly. But what is that bird, by the way?
Yeah.
I was at the Rio Grande Bird Festival, the Lower Rio Grande Bird Festival, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and went on the Birding by Ear trip to where was it? One of the wildlife refuges down there with Michael O'Brien and his wife, and it's like, oh my goodness, it's insane. I mean,
he might be
chip note.
Yeah, he might be the most talented birding by ear specialist that I know.
I mean, he has to be. Yeah.
It's astounding, and it's knowing people like Michael and that skills just always keeps me humble.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it was just shocking. I mean, you'd hear one chip note, and he'd say, "Oh, blue grosbeaks." I'm like, wow. Where'd you see that? Oh, I didn't see that. They just flew overhead.
Yep. But he's right.
He's always right.
That's astounding. He's pretty accurate at all that.
Yeah,
so.
I know. I went to Kenya with a fellow, James Bradley, who grew up in Kenya and has kind of a cool story. But he was like that there. I mean, and he lives in British Columbia. He hasn't lived in Kenya in 20 years, and he still knows every single sound. It's just insane. Yeah, some people have that incredible audio talent. It's pretty special.
I think there's hours of dedication.
It doesn't just happen.
Learning exactly. So it's that mix of it comes easy to them, but even for the folks that might come easy to, you're still talking about some pretty serious time in the field.
For sure. So what do you have coming up? You're going to Spain.
Yep, I have a tour to Spain coming up, and then after that, I think is when we get down to the Texas Hill Country. We're doing that tour with our Reader Rendezvous. We will sometimes partner with other tour companies. So for the one in Texas Hill Country, we're going to be working with Field Guides. They're actually headquartered out of Austin.
Right.
And, this will be a tour that has components of birding. That we will go to a distillery and sample some of the, local craft whiskeys that they're doing, some of the food. Of course, Austin's just huge culturally as well.
It is.
We're even going to go to a music studio and see a little bit of a kind of music recording in progress. So we're going to get just a whole flavor of the area.
Very cool.
And the folks at Field Guides have been so great in understanding the value of those cultural components, as well as obviously the target birds that we have and seeing the bats too. So we have that going on. The New River Birding and Nature Festival, a perennial favorite of mine in West Virginia near the New River Gorge.
Okay. I've never been to West Virginia.
Yeah, run by Jeff Heater. It's at a place called Possum Creek. Probably the best place in the entire North America to be able to consistently see Swainson's warbler.
Yeah.
And just
that's a good one. That's not an easy one. Yeah.
Not an easy one, exactly.
I've seen one.
Oh, yeah.
One.
So that one I look forward to going each and every year. The New River Birding Festival. Bill Thompson got me really turned on to that festival. He was kind of in on that event early on, and when I was at Eagle Optics, said, "You got to come to this birding festival and sell optics here." But it's just such a great event. The attendees are fantastic. The people who run it are great. It's just like a family reunion every year. So I've got that to look forward to. Then the Kachemak Bay Shorebird Festival in Homer, Alaska, which happens Mother's Day weekend every year. That's another great event. Once again, Homer, Alaska is just a great town to visit. It's, all the shorebirds are coming through. It's just kind of spring is breaking. The whole town supports this festival. It's really heavily locally attended. Okay. But unlike some places where you can go, there's a lot of locals. Everyone in Alaska pretty much loves the outdoors, whether they're
for sure
hunting or birding,
whether
or
they do it on a snowmobile or a bird watcher somehow or other.
But if you live up there, odds are you appreciate the outdoors. It's a great market from a sales perspective, going up there and selling optics, and but the engagement that everyone has with this, it's kind of like the beginning of their tourist season, is the Shorebird Festival, and the level of engagement that the town has, and they embrace it with the local wildlife refuge there. It's a really fun event. I've been doing that one for maybe going on 10 years now, and Nice. It's always one of my great spring traditional events that I go to. So that's going to, essentially round up my spring. Then, what's going on in June, we'll have to see. Right now, it's a little bit early. The Acadia Birding Festival is a possibility. There's some other events that might be happening. I've got a 18-year-old daughter graduating from high school this year as well. So
you might want to be around in June.
I got to be sure I'm around for her high school graduation.
That would be nice. She'd appreciate that.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, good. So I have to say, I think I might do some more bird festivals. I've always sort of been, I've kind of been a person who just wanted to find my own birds. The idea of going and having somebody show me birds was just, I don't know, it seemed like cheating almost a little bit.
There's something to be said, though, about being around your people, right? It's not too often that you can get together with dozens or even hundreds of birders. And, sometimes it's I value being able to go out birding on my own, but certainly having shared experiences with other bird watchers is something that I enjoy thoroughly.
For sure. So, I mean, I do that on a local basis. We have a birding club, and Ken Brown's my kind of mentor and best birding buddy, and we lead trips all over the place locally, and so we have our own little group of people, but some of that seems a little different going out with people you don't know. But anyway, I have the little bit of festival experience I've done. It's been great. So I think I might have to take that up. My wife died a year ago, so I'm a little more footloose now, and it might be a strategy for me. We'll see.
Well, I mean, I'd be happy to recommend a couple. I mean, if you're looking for, smaller ones, the Acadia Birding Festival that I mentioned earlier is great. If you don't mind being gone from the northern, or from the, the main 48 states during spring migration for a little bit, the Shorebird Festival up in Homer, Alaska is another one that's really worth going to.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, of course, you've got larger events like the Space Coast Birding Festival in Titusville, Florida, that happens in late January. And, it's certainly one of the bigger birding festivals around,
right,
but a great place to meet all sorts of people from across the birdwatching industry, whether it's authors, speakers, professional tour leaders, and you have a lot of great opportunities to go birding with people like Michael O'Brien or Richard Crossley,
for sure,
or something like that at some of these major birding events.
That can be cool. Kay and I spent a weekend with Pete Dunn at the Hawk Watch in October a few years ago, and
fantastic.
Oh my goodness, we were at the Hawk Watch, and Pete says, "You got to go to the Butterfly Triangle right now." And I said, "Why?" He says, "Crosley has a Bicknell's thrush and a Swainson's thrush in hand to compare." So we go down, and Crosley's there, and he had just misnetted both thrushes, and he had them there, and he's kind of and he's a strongly opinionated fellow.
He is.
And so he's given us this lecture on these two birds, and he says, people say you can't tell them apart in the field. Well, look at these birds. See the difference in this? See that? You can see that through your binos. And after about 10 minutes, a fellow turns to me and says, and which one's which?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you learn from an experience like that. Don't argue with Richard Crossley.
No, I was not going to argue with Richard Crossley. That was not going to happen. But it was just in the monarchs going overhead, and what was it? Red-bellied woodpeckers, I think. I think they may not supposed to be migratory, but they flew over by the dozens and dozens and dozens. So we're thinking, they seem to be going somewhere. And anyway,
that's Cape May for you.
It was and the morning flight. Oh my goodness, what a crazy experience that is. So the Cape May is pretty special. So anyway, I'm gonna kind of wrap up a little bit by having you give us some suggestions. So I'm getting back to optics a little bit and away from birding. Suggestions. I caught on your podcast that you think the Kawa youth binos are a pretty cool option for kids.
The Koa YF, and a couple things that make that binocular really nice for kids. One is, it's a good price point. It's $100 for those binoculars.
That's pretty nice.
The other thing that makes them really ideal is that they have a narrow interpupillary distance, and what I mean by that is that you can squeeze the eyepieces close together. So for a small face, they easily accommodate. So those things right there, and the fact that they're in those lower magnifications, 6 power in particular, really great for kids, because all those lower magnification makes the binocular more user friendly.
Sure.
Amongst other things, and whenever you're talking about binoculars with someone, one of the first considerations I always try to put in their mind first and foremost is what is going to work well for you, not what's got the best optics in your price range necessarily, but first and foremost, what's comfortable for you to carry, what's comfortable for you to hold, what are you going to have success with. And that gets more into the size binocular, whether it's a 10 by 42 or an 8 by 32 or whatever it is, but having something that's just user-friendly and highly functional. And what user-friendly means is different for every user, of course, depending on where you live, what your preferences are. So that kind of comes first and foremost. And then once we figure out, all right, here's the type of binocular you're looking for, then you can look at price ranges and start getting into some of the performance characteristics. But first you have to find what is from a size perspective.
What works for you? Sure.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of friends who ask me, they're not birders and they're not poor, but they're not going to spend $2,500 on a pair of top end binoculars.
Yeah.
But they might spend $400 or $500 on a pair of binoculars, or $300 or $400. So what for that sort of person who maybe watches their feeder or listen to the water and watch the boats go by and maybe does a little bit of birding, what could I aim them, other than tell them to call you at Redwood? What could I tell them about that kind of niche?
So when you look at the landscape of binoculars out there that birders are using, and you think of the prices varying from, say, $100 like those Koa YF binoculars all the way up to the real top-of-the-shelf binoculars these days are running $2,500, $2,600. In between that $400 to $500 price range is really kind of a sweet spot. If people get binoculars in that price range, you're often looking at optics that, as you develop as a bird watcher, as your skills and interests develop, you aren't going to necessarily outgrow that price point. Whereas if you're going to be under, $250 or so, you're getting into binoculars that might be great as, entry level and being able to learn to appreciate and identify birds. Over time, these are pieces that you'd kind of want to upgrade. So I always try to tell people, try to hit that $400 to $500 price range to get something that's going to have some longevity for you.
Sure.
If that's the way you approach this type of purchase. Vortex has a model called the Viper HD, which I absolutely love. It's well built. It's got a really generous field of view. The optics are great. It has extra low dispersion glass, or ED glass.
Right.
Zeiss has a model called the Zeiss Terra ED. That's another really good model. And then there's one that I've been turned on to recently by Opticron called the Natura, which is maybe a little bit more expensive than these two binoculars, but once again, just really nice, hits a great price point. And you're talking about binoculars that will be waterproof, shock resistant, submersible, fully multi-coated optics. All three of those models have extra low dispersion glass in it, and just really good pieces. So those are three binoculars I will point to people on a regular basis. Another one's a Nikon Monarch. Nikon has a little bit of a kind of a confusing nomenclature. They have a Monarch 5 and a Monarch 7. They have this like Pro Staff, I think it's like a 3 and a Pro Staff 5, and a little bit hard to follow. But essentially, the more that second number is, the better the binocular. But the Nikon Monarch 5 is another good piece that maybe not quite as nice as these other ones that I just mentioned, but you can get them for under $300, I believe, and still very good for the money.
Cool. And on the high end binoculars, I'm a Swarovski guy. I've been using them for years.
Yeah, and you can't go wrong. You can't go wrong with a pair of Swarovskis, can you?
No, they're super. My Swarovskis I got for Christmas maybe 15 or 18 years ago or something. It was like the best Christmas present ever from my wife. But I learned something that would just shock me. I tripped at Westport on the we were on the docks watching looking for a bar-tailed godwit, and the docks go up and down, and a little rope came up and it tripped me, and I fell and got a little chip right in the middle of the eyepiece glass, and it was like, dang.
Wow.
That was awful. So I battled that for a few months, and I finally called up Swarovski people, and I says, oh God, can you replace that? And he said, yeah, we can replace that. It'd be $100. I'm like, oh my God, that's cool.
Yeah.
And they said,
not only can they replace it, they do it incredibly affordably.
Yeah, $100. And I said, wow, how much would it cost to get them? Well, you can get all four done for $250. I said it at $250. I got brand new binoculars. It's like, oh my goodness, it's just crazy.
When you look at binoculars, there's so many things to consider when you're thinking about what kind of binoculars you might want to get, and certainly you see this in all price points. But you talk about Zeiss, Leica, and Swarovski, these top manufacturers,
sure.
And they make things that are so comparable. Oftentimes, people will try to pick out which one has the best optics. I'm gonna buy the ones that's going to give me the best view, and it's kind of a losing game because they're all so good. How do you tell the difference?
Yeah.
So it kind of boils down to things like ergonomics or features, and certainly one of the things that people love about Swarovski is their customer service is just as high end as the product they sell. And one thing that gives them a pretty unique advantage in that high-end price point is that they have an incredible service center in Cranston, Rhode Island, where they can actually do repairs here in the U.S. So
they're
their
on my
ability
address
to do
list.
things,
they're in my contacts.
So to do things affordably and have a quick turnaround time, they have set themselves up to provide service at a next level, which a lot of these other importers of optics, they don't have the infrastructure here in the U.S. to do. Yeah. So hats off to Swarovski for doing that. I've had a chance to visit their facilities in Cranston, and pretty sophisticated. They certainly invested a ton of money in that, but I would say that the return has been pretty good for them in that sense of customer loyalty and brand recognition.
I was boggled. It was like 6 to 8 weeks turnaround. It was like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I mailed them. 3 days later, I got a phone call, and like a week later, I get my binos back. It was spectacular.
Not bad, huh?
Yeah, not bad at all.
Yep.
Not bad at all. It's pretty cool. And I saw a review in the recent Birdwatchers Digest of the new Zeiss scope. Now, all my friends either have a Swarovski or a Kawa. Those are kind of the ones that I see. So I've never looked through this new Zeiss scope. It sounds pretty cool. It
is. They have incorporated. It's nice to have them come to the market with a kind of a modern scope. It had been a little while since we had a new kind of competitive Zeiss scope out there, and certainly the Harpia kind of fits that niche. It has the field flattening lenses on it, which you're seeing a lot in high-end binoculars these days. It gives you that really sharp field of view, north to south, left to right as you look through it. So it's kind of a panoramic, crystal clear view that you get when looking through it.
It's great for sea watches and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. Swarovski uses a similar technology with their spotting scopes as well. And the Zeiss also has this really unique focus mechanism. It's got a single helical collar on the barrel of the scope, kind of like you'd focus a camera lens, if you will. But it's got two different gear settings in there. So once you turn, I don't know if it's a quarter of a turn, I don't know exactly what the ratio is, but it's a fine focus. And then after a certain portion of the revolution, if you keep turning, it automatically kicks into a faster focus mode, allowing you to rapidly focus near to far or vice versa.
That sounds like sort of extraordinary. I've got a Kawa that has two different wheels of
exactly.
course
this is in one wheel.
Yeah.
And it's it takes a little bit getting used to, but once you have adapted to how it feels, it's quite effective. And a lot of people who use that just love it for that reason.
Yeah.
So they've only make it an 85 and a 95 millimeter version. So they've only got big scopes out there.
And for those of us who travel, my next scope is going to be smaller. Yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully, Zeiss, if you're listening in Germany, Mr. Jerry Dobler, get us a 65 millimeter version of that scope when you can.
Yeah, that sounds like I'll keep an eye open for that. I'm kind of in a little bit, as I get a little bit older, I'm going to be in the market for a little bit lighter, a little bit smaller scope. These things can be a monster, especially if you carry a camera too. A camera and binos and a scope, you feel like you're backpacking.
And with scopes, it's with anything with optics. It's all trade-offs. You want something lightweight.
But I've used the 65 scopes, and if they're not as good, they're almost as good.
Yeah. Well,
there isn't much difference.
The high-end ones, that's kind of a way of having your cake and eating it too. When you look at mid-price scopes, you really see a difference in brightness between the 65 and 85s. But certainly as you spend more, you get that glass that's more efficient at transmitting light, and it's almost like you're buying yourself some extra aperture without carrying around the extra weight.
Exactly. Really cool. So, Ben, I've really, really had a good time talking with you. Thanks so much for being on my show.
It was my pleasure.
I'll make sure I get links in the podcast notes to your store and all of that sort of thing. Give me one piece of advice for young birders. What would you tell them in terms of optics?
One piece of advice for young birders in terms of optics, I would say, I guess, and you hear this from a lot, get as good of a pair of binoculars as you can afford. With binoculars these days, it's one of the few things that we have in our lives that is purely mechanical. No electronics, no software upgrades. It's not like a car where you're going to see so many birds and you got to trade it in for the next one because, you've already seen 4,000 birds with this one. You've worn it out now. It's a durable good that lasts a while, so it really makes sense to maybe reach a little bit further than your budget can allow, but you're going to end up having something that is going to not only have this longevity for you, but you just get much more use out of it. So that would be my advice.
Sounds like good advice. Good advice.
And you hear it all the time. I would say this, it's not necessarily a nugget of wisdom that you've only heard here. It's pretty common advice, but it's pretty solid advice, I'd say.
I think so. Well, I think you've lived up to your LeBron James of optics, but not the Michael Jordan. You didn't go for the Michael Jordan. I was pleased to see that as a man of a different generation. The Michael Jordan of optics, that would have been too much. But LeBron James, I think you can live up to that.
Yeah. That was one of my buddy Bill Thompson coined that term. It seems to have stuck. So
good. It's not a bad term. Yeah.
It's kind of sticky.
If you've got to wear it, you might as well wear the top. Yeah, good. Well, thanks again so much for coming on the show. This has been Ed Pullen, your host at the Bird Banter Podcast with Ben Lizdas from Red Start Birding, and it's been an enjoyable time. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me, Ed.
Bye-bye. So that wraps up episode number 7 of the Bird Banter Podcast featuring Ben Lizdas. I've had a great time today and hope you have too. Be sure to subscribe to the Bird Banter Podcast on wherever you get your RSS feeds, the iTunes Store, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher. You can also find me at the birdbanter.com website, where I'll put up blog posts and related information that you might enjoy. If you're more of a YouTube person, you can also find these podcasts on the YouTube channels. You can also find me on most of the social media feeds, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'll leave links to those in the podcast notes. So until next time, birders, good birding, good day.